Welcome to the segment where I review movies past and present, examining them from a variety of perspectives, including the subjective, psychological, and personal. Informative and occasionally funny, this is LoganLand Rants. Hey guys, today we'll be talking about Clerks. Yeah, I know, I'm a little surprised too, if I'm being honest. Jay and Silent Bob reboot has recently come and gone. It was in theaters for 2 days because that's what Kevin Smith chose to do, the director Kevin Smith. He chose to do that, and then how do I put this? He started a whole roadshow full of people somehow willing to pay extra dollars for Jay and Silent Bob reboot. I know, crazy, right? But today, I'm not going to talk about Jay and Silent Bob reboot, because I and no one I know has actually seen it, yet we might when it comes out on home video or DVD or whatever we call it now. But if I'm being honest, this isn't about Jay and Silent Bob reboot or Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, which will apparently be a double feature at some of the showings, but rather we're going to talk about where it all began. We're going to talk about the broader View Askew universe, obviously, as they call it after Kevin Smith's old production company, View Askew Productions. But Clerks was undeniably the one that started it all. For those of us who somehow don't know, I'm sure if you've read even a slight bit about film, you know what Clerks is. Clerks is a 1994 film directed and written by the aforementioned Kevin Smith. I don't think he edited Clerks. He did edit Jay and Silent Bob reboot, so I've been told, so put a pin in that. But Kevin Smith made Clerks on quite famously actually, on a $27,000 budget. He had to max out a few credit cards with $4,000 limits and apparently sold most of his comic book collection to fund the movie. A pretty impressive sum given that most of the film was shot on the convenience store he worked at the time. To the best of my knowledge, I'm sure this is common knowledge for anyone, he only worked nights, which explains a plot device used in the film. You'll know it when you see it. Jamming gum in the locks, those are only keywords you need to know. But Clerks, despite its technical limitations and, let's say, okayish acting, all is forgiven because of the great writing and the stellar way in which the film is constructed. I'll admit there is an alternate ending that Kevin Smith admittedly cut out because of test screenings, but he understood audience feedback, both filmmaking and just general audiences, and as a result we got a better structured picture, because according to his original pitch, it was about a guy having a bad day at a convenience store and then, spoiler, dying at the end. To be clear, he doesn't actually die, spoiler, again, in the final draft of the film. Although events do happen that I won't spoil here. That's the closest thing to a spoiler you're going to get, listeners. But the thing about it is Clerks was definitely a marvel considering its technical limitations. And it's still impressive to this day. Although to be clear, it's not the first film to do that. An earlier example would be the 1992 film Slacker, which came out 2 years prior to Clerks. Supposedly, Kevin Smith saw that movie, which was directed by a guy named Richard Linklater, who's made some decent movies. That's sarcasm, he did a great job. But the thing about Slacker, which I've also seen, is Kevin Smith saw that and was so enthralled by the technical limitations and how he made it entirely in his own hometown, that he decided to make a movie entirely set in the convenience store he worked at the time. The convenience store, to the best of my knowledge, is defunct now, or is still existent, but the video store is now the video store where Dante, the main character of Clerks, his friend Randall works at the video store, which is next door to the convenience store that Kevin Smith worked. And as most video stores are, the RST Video, as they call it, is now defunct. However, the convenience store, as far as I know, is still in existence and was in fact used in a trailer for Jay and Silent Bob reboot and possibly the whole film. Like I said, I haven't seen it. But in addition to technical limitations and okayish acting, like I mentioned earlier, the thing that separates Clerks from its peers is its clever, if crude, writing. Because the thing about the writing of Clerks is that it's a thing of beauty. I think only one other writer, Quentin Tarantino, has actually managed to pull off something of this magnitude. Talky dialogue, very talky dialogue that is very impressive. And I was snapping right there, so you know it's rapid fire. But very few writers, like I think it's like Kevin Smith, Aaron Sorkin, and Quentin Tarantino, who are like known consummate writers who like understand the rapport the characters have. They know their characters well, and the dialogue is very rapid fire and effective, while also being character driven as a result. The point is, the writing accomplishes multiple things, and in Kevin Smith's case, at least early on, it worked for him. But that aside, the writing is admittedly crude, so this movie, while important to the history of cinema, or at least 90s independent cinema, is still not for everyone because it's very crude and awkward, and not everyone's a fan of that kind of humor. It's very raunchy. Like, I think that's the word I can use. But I also think that the film suffers from amateurish acting, and like I said, the technical limitations will certainly not be for everyone. Because some people like expensive explosions and stuff. I wouldn't know why, because I think low-budget films are actually pretty competent and worth studying. But I can understand why you like it just as much as I can understand why you don't like it. So with that in mind, let's talk about the rest of the Viewisk universe. Because even though Kevin Smith made a shared universe before stuff like Marvel did it, but it wasn't quite the same shared universe. It was much more low-key than the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The Viewisk universe, as fans have called it, is more interrelated characters coming in and out of the same stuff. So let's go through the Viewisk universe, because I've seen all of the Viewisk universe except for Clerks 2 and Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, obviously. But we started with Clerks, and then Mallrats, which flopped theatrically, but is still a competent and funny film that colorfully expands the Viewisk universe, actually. And Chasing Amy is probably Smith's most dramatic work, and again, to be clear, all of these films are not for everyone, because all of these films in the Viewisk universe contain very crude humor. And in Dogma's case, the film from 1999 that directly succeeds Chasing Amy, it's very sacrilegious and blasphemous. It is worth noting Kevin Smith used to be a Catholic, but now he's like, I guess you'd call it irreligious? At least up until a few years ago, he was religious, or at least kind of. But then his dog died or something else happened. I don't know, faith is weird. I'm not a big fan of faith personally, and this is the closest thing you'll get to me being religiously literate for a while. But the thing about Chasing Amy and Dogma is they're both really competent, but Chasing Amy is more dramatic, and Dogma is, I guess you'd say, more satirical of the whole Catholic faith. And then there's Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, which is the direct prequel to this new film, Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. Or more accurately, Jay and Silent Bob Reboot is a sequel to Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. And as Kevin Smith described in an interview, Jay and Silent Bob Reboot is basically the same movie all over again as Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. So who knows, maybe he'll come up with something good, and maybe he'll double down on Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Because Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back was not great. It was still funny and had genuinely good moments, but I think it was tailor-made for Kevin Smith's fans. Like, there's a lot of winking references to the past 4 films, everything from Clerks to Dogma. And that doesn't work for everyone, because it's very crude and not for everyone. But it's still really competent and really effective in their delivery. And Kevin Smith's direction, while it admittedly has fizzled out since Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, I do admit Kevin Smith is a competent writer who understands his audience, and that's something to be applauded. And Clerks, that was just the genesis of that. Anyway, usual outro stuff. I heavily encourage you guys to pledge to the Patreon. Follow me on all the social media links. Subscribe to my channel. And I will see you next week with the next episode of LoganLand Rants. Goodbye.